Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video where we're talking about the 2022 Small Business Support Grant from the New South Wales Business Government. And this is predominantly for New South Wales business owners. So this information will be relevant if you run a business in New South Wales. So let's get onto it and find out how the Omicron COVID support can help you and your business to get through into the future months and hopefully make a really good 2022 calendar year. Well, hey guys, welcome to this month's video. As I said in the intro, we are looking at the 2022 COVID-19 Omicron Business Support Program. It isn't called the Omicron, but I'm going to refer to it as that because this business support program that's come up from the New South Wales Government basically is come about because of Omicron. So the whole purpose of today's video is to give you enough information so you can go ahead and apply and hopefully get an understanding to see whether you do fit into the program and see if you can gain some support. So let's just go through some basics. Well, the first thing is you can apply from the 14th of February 2022, which happens to be just coming up or maybe just past, depending on when you're watching it. And you can apply for this grant up until the 31st of March. Like previous grants that we've seen, especially from sort of that June 2021, which would be the Job Saver Grant, you can apply directly at servicenewsouthwales.gov.au. The site is there on the screen there, and we will leave a comment in the video itself. So, what is the eligibility criteria? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to have an active Australian business number, also known as an ABN. And so that means you've got to basically be in business. And you've got to demonstrate that you're in business as of the 1st of January 2021. So if you set up a business midway during January, sorry to say, you won't qualify. The next thing you need as well is that to qualify, your turnover must be between 75,000 and 50 million. And lastly, you need to maintain, and this is probably for those who have employees, you need to maintain your employee headcount from the 30th of January to the end of February, which being the 28th of February 2022. So like the previous grants that we saw in with the Job Saver, basically what you need to do as far as maintaining an employee basically means that employee-employee relationship needs to be consistent and needs to continue. So you can stand an employee down, but what you cannot do is you can't say retrench them or say that you want to get rid of them for whatever reason. If they decide that they want to leave for whatever reason, that won't impact your headcount. Effectively makes it the same. Doesn't. It might be a different number, but effectively it won't mean that you haven't maintained your employee headcount. So the business grant, it is a one-off payment, which if you read the documents, the criteria, the guidelines on the New South Wales website, the Service New South Wales website, it does talk about a 4-week period. But effectively what it is, it's a 4-week period in February where the New South Wales Government is going to pay a lump sum grant depending on some circumstances that you will fit into. So the first thing is, it's probably the best thing to do is have a look in the middle of the table there. So what will happen is when you go to fill in the application, in the application will ask you what your monthly payroll is. It is something it's a figure that you're going to take from your last BAS or your instalment activity statement, which stands for the IAS. So effectively what's going to happen is, say for example it's your BAS, they will have and that would be a December BAS most likely, or maybe even your September BAS if you haven't launched your December BAS for 2021 yet. And effectively what will happen is if it's your BAS for December, they will take basically a third of that, and that will be the figure they'll use to determine the 20% of your wages. Now, when they take that 20%, and it might even be, say for example, you're an IAS. So for those who don't know, if you do an IAS, it's just basically a monthly activity statement. which just has your wages and the tax that you pay. And usually if you have, you're a bigger employer, and when I mean bigger, it's probably more than one or two people. When you've probably got a team of 3, 4, 5 upwards, you're probably most likely doing monthly reporting of those wages and the taxes that you collect. But effectively, whichever one you fit into, they're going to look at taking 20% of that figure, being the gross wages that you report at W1, and that is going to be effectively the grant that you're going to receive. Now, if, say, for example, that figure is less than $3,000, you will effectively get $3,000 straight up. So, for example, you calculated $2,500. Well, what will happen is you'll get an automatically $3,000. But on the other scenario there, if you calculated more than 20, well, the government, the New South Wales government, is not going to give you more than 20,000. Now, it's really important as well to understand the decline period for you to test if you've eligible. And remember that this grant is there because you've had a decline in turnover. So it's here to basically help prop your business up, help you continue going, so that when Omicron's gone and things are sort of back to the normal that we kind of know, and trade is getting back to a bit more confidence out in the marketplace, and there's the whole of issues are not from COVID are not declining your business. The income will therefore the income that the grant will help your business continue. But it's important to understand that we need to prove in this test here to get the grant that you've had a decline in turnover of at least 40%. And when you do look at that 40%, it's important to, first of all, understand how you report your GST in your BAS. So if you collect your GST on a cash basis, well, when you go to look at your sales, you're going to look at it on a cash basis. If you report on an accruals basis, well, once again, you're going to look at that decline period, your turnover based on the decline period. As far as looking at that period that you're going to compare at, there's two options. You can have a look at the month of January, so January 2022, which has been completed, and compare that turnover to either January 20 or January 2021. And either one of those must be a decline in turnover of at least 40%. If that fails and it doesn't work, and you still feel as though that you've had a decline in I guess your business turnover, you can also look at the next period, which would be between the 1st of February and the 14th of February 2022. And once again, when you look at that, you're going to have 40% down based on that period in that first half of February, and then right up to and then what you would compare it to is the same period, so the same dates in 2020 or in 2021. And if you hit that 40% reduction, well, it's most likely you are eligible for the one-off payment, being this business support grant. Now, you might be saying, "What if I don't employ people?" Well, because the previous examples we were looking at were for those who had employees. Now, if you're a non-employing business, and I guess it's really important to recognise that a non-employing business is typically a sole trader, or probably even a business operator who runs through a trust, where effectively they're not paying wages, and they could even be wages themselves. Like if, say, for example, we had a business owner that was just by themselves and they were operating a company, it's very likely they'll be paying themselves a wage, being like a salary that you would report in an activity statement. But if you're a sole trader or you operate a trust, a trust, you probably just pay yourself a distribution at the end of the financial year. So if you're in that scenario, this area is for you. So what happens here basically is the decline period of turnover is pretty much the same, once again, as the previous one we went through for those who are employing people. So once again, you're going to have 40% reduction in turnover for the month of January 2022, comparing to the month of January 2020 or January 2021, or you have a decline in turnover looking at the 1st of February 2022 to the 14th of February 2022 and comparing that to the same period in 2021 and 2020. It's also important to note that when we are looking at like a sole trader business, a non-employing business who's receiving payments, that basically the source of income you're getting from your business, 50% or more of that total income has to be from business activities. If it's not from business activities, well, and it's primarily, so i.e. 50% or more, therefore you won't be eligible for the grant. The other thing as well is if, say, for example, you've got, a few different activities that you're involved in, and what happens there is you can't go applying for multiple, amounts of the grant. You can get one and one only. That basically relates back to you. Other eligibility factors that you really need to consider. And I think this is really important. In the previous grants, I think there were definitely businesses out there that were getting it that probably, may have not been in a position where they probably didn't need it, or might have had, maybe elaborated some sort of reduction in turnover. Basically, I guess calculated or created it by, delaying invoices. And this is where the government, the New South Wales government's really sort of come in, and they want to sort of deter that from happening. And really, they've spelt out in the guidelines that, for a business to receive the decline in turnover from COVID-19 and get the grant, you have to have had a reduced customer demand. And examples that might have led you to actually having issues in your turnover might have been having labour shortages, supply chain disruptions. But if, say, for example, you've created it, and it might be, say, for example, we've got here in the middle here, if you're a business where you've gone, oh, well, I've gone away for January, and, this January I've gone away, whereas previous Januaries I haven't, and fantastic, I can go and claim it. Well, in that case, you wouldn't be able to. Another example that I've got here is that, the business has, some seasonal variations. Well, I mean, it might be very hard to prove, but if you're very close to that 40%, the seasonal variations might be that, it might be difficult to sort of prove that if you're in a business that's got seasonal stuff that happens. So if, say, for example, you're a business that does lawn mowing, and with a lot of rain that we've had, maybe half the time in January, especially this summer we've had, you might not have been able to mow lawns because it's been raining. That would be a seasonal variation. So it hasn't been COVID that stopped you from producing the same level of turnover. It's actually been the weather. So in that case, an example where you wouldn't be eligible to go and get the grant. Another example is if you renovated your business location, your premises, and you closed your business, and that was a reason why your turnover was reduced. Therefore, you'll be in an example where you're not eligible to get it. The next thing as well, just like the previous grants that we've seen, all of them, if you're a business where you primarily earn passive income from rent, interest, dividends, and there's some other examples that are listed in the guidelines, you are an ineligible business. Lastly, the one thing I probably want to mention as well is if, say, for example, you don't maintain your employee headcount, you have to notify the New South Wales Service, New South Wales, and it also probably means that if that happens, well, you won't be eligible for the grant, and you'll have to give that money that you've received back. So it's very important to keep that headcount. As I said previously in the previous slide, if you do have an employee leave, that's not counted in your headcount. Like, your headcount's still the same, so that you don't minus it off. And if, say, for example, you stand your employees down because you don't have to work for them, that's not reducing your headcount either. As long as you keep them essentially on the books so that when things get back to normal, you can employ them again, it's all fine to go. So one question I know I'm going to receive quite a bit is, when are payments to be made? Well, payments will be made basically during one of the 4 weeks of February 2022. Now, the reality is you can't apply until the 14th of February. So I dare say that what's going to happen is you won't get the money until after 14th of February, and it'll probably be very quick. There's been a lot of bugs ironed out from the last time they've done it, whereas the first time we had this for the JobSaver grant it was completely new for Service New South Wales, and payments didn't get made for months. But this is a system they've had in place for quite some time. So I dare say that really what should happen is if you lodge your application, maybe on the 14th of February, if you lodge your application at the same time like everyone else, you probably won't even be able to get in to lodge because there'll be a whole lot of people who are trying to lodge. There might not be enough bandwidth there to get on the internet there and do it. But if you are lucky enough to lodge on the 14th, you might not see it straight away. Might be a little bit more of a delay, but after that initial period, I'd say that you probably see it very quick. Very much the next day or the day after. Now, it's very important as well that you keep some evidence to support your eligibility, because I guarantee you that the service that both governments, federal and state, have given out a lot of money. And there's also been a lot of people who have taken advantage of this and probably weren't eligible to start with. So there's probably going to be a lot of audited activity. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm just on the edge and I can probably fudge a few things, I dare say probably have another think about it, because it's very likely that you might be in a position where you get an audit and you have to pay it back, plus interest, penalties, fines, and whatever else. So what evidence do you need to support your eligibility? Well, the first thing you want to do is you probably want to have written down internally who your employees are and how you come up with that headcount. Now, when you go to put your application in, they will ask you for that number. So they will have that number on file when you go to lodge. Now, just remember that headcount, it's the employees you have at the 30th of January. So if you go and employ another 4 people on the 29th of January, well, you now got 4 extra staff for that whole period and for the grant. And if they don't work out and you ask them to leave for whatever reasons, that will affect your headcount. Now, it's really important as well that when you lodge for this application, that you submit your most recent tax return and remove the tax file number when you do lodge it, because we don't want to be handing out our tax file numbers to just anyone, especially, Service New South Wales. They are not the ATO, so they're not privy to getting that information on your personal information. So make sure you somehow get that removed. And the return that you need to lodge is the 2020 or 2021 financial year. So if you're a company, well, you're going to lodge your company. You're going to attach your company return. If you're a sole trader, you're going to attach your personal tax return. If you're a trust, you're going to lodge your trust return. You're going to need to also provide evidence of how you calculated your weekly payroll. How you do this is by submitting your last BAS, and that would be, and it must be a BAS that's fallen in the 2021-2022 year. So that means, look, if you haven't lodged your BAS, you're in strife and you're not going to get it. So you want to get your BAS lodged and sorted out ASAP. And it also means that in the financial year so far, we've only had 2 BASs. So that's your choice of either submitting September or December. And it might be best to have a look at what your figures are, and maybe get that December BAS lodged if you haven't lodged it already. The next thing, part B, there is you can submit your IAS, which stands for Instalment Activity Statement, which effectively is the wages that you're reporting for that basically on a monthly basis. So for some people there, if you've already lodged your January one, that would be the activity statement that you upload and use. Now, really important to note as well that those businesses that are in industries that are not directly impacted by the pandemic. So an example of an industry that's directly impacted by COVID would be something like a cafe, a bar, a club. Now, if you're in that position, you will need to supply a letter from your accountant, being a tax agent or a bookkeeper, being a BAS agent or a qualified accountant, to confirm that your business is eligible. Calculating your turnover reduction, there's a really good calculator in Xero that you can use that will help make that whole process really easy. And when you are looking at that calculation, just once again, when you're comparing that turnover, it's important to basically look at the GST method that you're lodging your GST on. So once again, if you're lodging on a cash basis, and so just so you know, a cash basis basically means is that you are only paying the GST once you receive the sale in your bank account. and you're only claiming the GST once you've had the expense. Whereas an accruals basis basically means that when the GST is, when you do an invoice, if the invoice is not paid by the time the quarter comes around, it doesn't matter, you're still going to be paying the GST on that invoice. And I guess the flip side as well of any expenses, you haven't paid for the expense, you can still claim the GST credit. So once again, when we're looking to see whether you do fit into this turnover reduction, it's important to look at the reports based on how you're reporting your GST. So we do have, just cutting over very quickly to other videos that we have that are COVID related. We've got some really good ones to help you out if you're having a few things that are troubling you in your business. First up, marketing. It's really important this time of the year, especially with everything that's happened with reduction in your business, to get on top of your marketing. So we've got a really good video on our website to talk about marketing and from a marketing expert. And we've also got another video there on responsibilities as a director. And this is really important during the COVID period. And that's up online there on our website as well. And also, we've also got a great video on leadership. And what we do ask as well, if you really like today's video, that you subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Okay, so we're just going to pop over to Xero, and I'm going to show you where to find those tools in Xero so you can go and get the reports you need to work out whether you qualify or not. Okay, guys, so we're in Xero here, and for those who are Xero users, this will be really handy. So we're just in a demo company here. We're not sharing any client details. And this is something that every account bookkeeper has access to. And effectively what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to find the right reports so that you can have a look and see whether you qualify for the reduction in the turnover with the COVID test. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pop over here to accounting and go to reports. And underneath tax, there is COVID Business 19 support. Just click on that one. And a little bit of a disclaimer there. And what we'll do is we'll just go down a little bit. And here we can see now, this file doesn't really have much data in it, but you can see here it's got the impacted period. So this is what you want to put in for based on now. And then you want to change the comparing period. So you can change to the same period in this scenario here, you're going to compare to either 2021 or 2020, and then it will come up with the figures. Okay. And then if, say, for example, that doesn't work for you, to change the impacted period, we just pull down this little box here, switch over here, and then take from the 1st of February to the 14th. You can see today's the 10th, but let's assume that we've got some data in there up until the 14th. So this will only be, you can only do this once, the 14th has come around and you've completely reconciled your file. But nonetheless, if we put the dates in there, and then it's given us the same period in 2020, and then we can once again change to 2021, and there you go. Look, it's come up here. See here, it's come up with a number. So there's obviously some data here. But in a scenario where, say, for example, this would automatically come up, but say that, came up with $2,000. Actually, sorry, maybe say that was $10,000 originally. You see it's got 35%, so you wouldn't qualify there. It's got the full. You can also, what I suggest is once you get your result and it fits in about 40% or greater reduction, you can export this to PDF. I would keep this to PDF, get in Excel, so you know what you've done. And the other thing as well, I've talked about cash and accruals. This is where you change your accounting method. So if you're unsure which method you are, have a look at your last activity statement. And usually in the top right-hand corner, it will say whether the accounting method is cash or accruals. So once you've done the report there in Xero, and you know whether you qualify or not, if you do qualify, that's where you jump over to the Service New South Wales website and log in with your credentials that you've set up from the previous time from the JobSaver grant, and then fill in the forms as you go. And that's everything that you need to know. If there's any questions on small business grant that we have here we talked about today, please feel free to reach out. So once again, we do ask that if you have enjoyed today's video, that you subscribe and like and share this with your family. So we look forward to seeing your comments and what you thought about the video. Any questions, once again, please reach out to us. You can find us at ngraccounting.com.au, where you can contact us, and we're quite happy to help you as much as we can. We want to be there to help the community and those in general, just to get through this tough time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.